Most people in the city knew one rule: never get involved with the Lee family. The mother of Korea's most ruthless mafia boss wasn't just powerful, she was a living legend. Sharp as a blade, fiercely protective, and utterly uncompromising. Cross her, and you crossed an empire built on blood and loyalty. But on one scorching afternoon, Madame Lee Hye-Jin crossed paths with someone who didn't know fear. A housemaid in a simple uniform, dark curls pulled back in a practical bun, carrying cleaning supplies through the mansion's west wing. And that's the woman who would save her life. The kitchen had been quiet moments before, too quiet. Madame Lee had decided to make tea herself, waving off the staff. Old habits from her youth, before money, before power, before her son became the most feared man in Seoul. She didn't notice the gas leak, didn't see the spark, but Maria Betty, trained since childhood by a father who survived 3 tours in hostile territories, smelled it instantly. She was running before her mind fully processed why. The explosion hit as she burst through the kitchen door. Flames erupted like a living thing, hungry and fast, and Madame Lee was frozen in the center, trapped. Welcome back, my beautiful family and friends. I have missed you all, missed all the experiences we've had together. It's been a rough ride, but trust me, we're getting everything back and running, so stick around. I need your support on YouTube now more than ever. Thank you specially for sticking around to this very moment. If you're hooked in and you're ready to enjoy this story, click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from, because tomorrow I will be giving you another story just as interesting as this one, and you don't want to miss it. Now, back to the story. The paramedics worked quickly, oxygen masks hissing, hands efficient. Maria sat on the mansion's front steps, letting them wrap gauze around her forearms while ash fell like black snow around them. Her lungs burned with each breath, but she kept her spine straight. Across the driveway, Madame Lee was being loaded onto a stretcher, arguing with the EMTs in rapid Korean. Then he arrived. The black SUV cut through the emergency vehicles like a shark through shallow water. Lee Min-ho stepped out before it fully stopped, 6 feet of controlled fury in a suit that probably cost more than Maria's yearly salary. His eyes swept the scene with military precision. Burning mansion, his mother on a stretcher, unfamiliar black woman covered in soot, sitting calmly while medics fussed over her. He crossed to Maria in 4 strides. "Who are you?" His English was perfect, accent barely there. Maria looked up, meeting eyes cold enough to freeze fire. Maria Betty, housemaid, West Wing detail. "Why were you in the kitchen?" "Smelled gas, traced it to source. Your mother was inside when it ignited." His jaw tightened. "And you ran in?" "Yes, sir." "Why?" Maria blinked. The question seemed obvious. Because someone needed help. "You could have died." "Could have. Didn't." She kept her tone flat, factual. Her father had taught her this. Report like a soldier, not a victim. No drama, just mission parameters and outcome. "Your mother is alive. Minor burns, smoke inhalation. She'll recover." Something flickered across Min-ho's face. Confusion, maybe. People didn't usually speak to him like this, like he was a commanding officer receiving a debrief rather than a crime lord to be feared. "You should have waited for security." His voice dropped to something dangerous. Maria held his stare. "Your mother would have been dead." Silence stretched between them, taut as a tripwire. Then Madame Lee's voice cut through, weakened by smoke but sharp with authority. "Min-ho, come here." He went, and Maria watched the transformation. The ice melted slightly as he knelt beside his mother's stretcher, touching her hand with unexpected gentleness. They spoke in Korean, but Madame Lee kept looking at Maria. Then the older woman raised her voice, speaking in English so everyone would understand. "This woman is my daughter-in-law. Treat her as family." The assembled staff went still. Min-ho's shoulders tensed. "Mother." Did I stutter? Madame Lee's eyes were steel wrapped in silk. She ran into fire for a stranger. That's not training, that's character. She stays. Maria stood carefully. Ma'am, I appreciate the sentiment, but I should check on my apartment. I have a shift tomorrow. You're not going anywhere. Min Ho's voice was final, absolute. You're involved now. In what? In us. He gestured at the burning mansion, his mother, the security team forming a perimeter, whether you want to be or not. Maria's spine straightened further, military posture her father had drilled into her since she was 7. With respect, sir, I don't take orders from civilians. The silence that followed was dangerous. Min Ho stared at her like she was a puzzle that didn't fit any known category. Maria stared back, refusing to flinch. Her father's voice echoed in memory. Fear is just information. It doesn't control you. Madame Lee laughed, a rough, smoke-damaged sound that ended in coughing. Oh, Min Ho, she's perfect. 2 hours later, in the private medical facility the Lee family owned, Maria sat while doctors worked on her burns. 2nd degree across both forearms, reddened skin on her face and neck. The doctor offered morphine. Maria shook her head. Just local anesthetic. The pain will be significant. It's manageable. Through the observation window, Min Ho watched. The housemaid, Maria, sat perfectly still while they cleaned and dressed her wounds. Didn't flinch, didn't cry, just breathed steadily and stared at the wall like she was somewhere else entirely. When a nurse came out, he stopped her. Is she stable? Yes, sir, but she refuses pain medication until we confirm your mother is out of danger. Something cracked in his chest, something he thought was permanently frozen. That evening, after doctors confirmed both women would fully recover, Min Ho found his mother sitting up in her private room. She gestured him to her side, then pointed at Maria through the connecting window. The younger woman had finally accepted medication and was sleeping, one arm draped across her stomach, the other wrapped in white gauze. Tell me about her, Madame Lee said quietly. Min Ho had already run her background. Maria Betty, 26, American. Father is James Betty, retired U.S. Army. 3 tours, decorated. Mother deceased. 1 younger sister in the States. Been in Seoul 6 months, working domestic positions. No criminal record, no political affiliations, no deaths. He paused. No reason to run into fire. Except character. Except that. Madame Lee touched his hand. Your father, she said, voice soft with memory, would have respected her. Min Ho understood the weight of those words. His father had respected almost no one, had trusted even fewer, had died because someone he trusted put a bullet in his back. But his mother was right. A woman who ran towards fire instead of away, who refused comfort until others were safe, who looked a mafia boss in the eye and said, I don't take orders from civilians. That was someone his father would have called warrior. And Min Ho, staring at the sleeping woman who'd saved his mother's life and didn't even know she'd just walked into a war, felt something he hadn't felt since he was 16 years old. Hope that maybe, just maybe, not everyone in his world would end up dead or broken. Maria Betty didn't know it yet, but she'd just become the most dangerous thing in Seoul, someone Lee Min Ho was starting to care about. Maria discharged herself from the medical facility after 18 hours. Against doctor's orders, against Min Ho's explicit instructions, and definitely against common sense. She needed to see her apartment, needed her things, needed something that was still hers in a world that had suddenly turned sideways. Min Ho didn't argue, just assigned 2 bodyguards, stone-faced men named Kang and Ri, who followed 3 steps behind as she took the subway across Seoul. They looked uncomfortable on public transit, hands hovering near concealed weapons. Maria ignored them. The apartment building came into view and her stomach dropped. Black scorch marks crawled up the exterior like grasping fingers. Her 4th-floor window was blown out completely, curtains hanging like burned flags. Professional job, too thorough to be accidental. The fire inspector's tape across the entrance fluttered in the breeze. Maria ducked under it and climbed stairs that crunched with debris. Behind her, Kang spoke urgently into his phone. She didn't care. Her apartment was a carbon shadow of itself. Walls blackened, furniture reduced to skeletal frames, ceiling collapsed in places. The smell hit her. Chemical accelerant mixed with burned personal history. Everything was ash. The photos of her father in uniform, her sister's letters, carefully saved in a shoebox, her mother's Bible, the one tangible thing she'd inherited, all gone. Maria moved through the destruction methodically, checking each room. In what used to be her bedroom, she found the small metal lockbox where she kept important documents. It had melted partially, but the latch still opened. Inside, somehow untouched by the flames, were two things: her passport and her father's dog tags from his first deployment, the ones he'd given her when she turned 18. She lifted them out. The metal was warm from surrounding heat, but intact. James R. Betty, Oneg, Baptist. Her hands didn't shake, her breath stayed even, but something inside her went very, very still. "Maria?" Min Ho's voice came from the doorway. She hadn't heard him arrive. He stepped through the wreckage in expensive shoes that would be ruined by ash, stopped 3 feet away. "They're sending a message." "About me?" Her voice sounded distant even to herself. "About us." Her phone buzzed. Father, of course. He had friends everywhere, people who'd served with him now scattered across the globe. Someone in Seoul had called him already. Maria answered, stepping toward the blown-out window for better reception. "You good, Dad?" Her father's voice was casual, but she heard the steel underneath, battle-ready, always. "Yeah, Dad. Small kitchen fire in the building. I'm fine." Silence. He knew. Of course he knew. 26 years of her life and she'd never successfully lied to him. But he didn't call her on it, which meant he understood she couldn't speak freely. "Remember what I taught you," he said quietly. "Always know your exits." "I remember. But never run until you choose to. Running's easy. Standing's hard. You're Betty blood. We stand." "Yes, sir. Love you, baby girl." "Love you too, Dad." She ended the call. Min Ho was watching her with those calculating eyes that missed nothing. "Your father?" "Former military. He understands threat assessment." "He told you not to run." Maria looked at him fully then, dog tags gripped in her scarred hand. "He told me to choose my ground. There's a difference." Something shifted in Min Ho's expression. Respect, maybe. Understanding. "My mother is having a room prepared for you. Permanent quarters. I don't need—" "Yes, you do." His voice gentled slightly. "You're a target now. I can't protect you if you're scattered across Seoul in temporary housing." Maria looked at the ruins of her small life. Everything she'd built in 6 months, erased in an hour. She thought about running, about catching a flight back to the States, back to her sister, back to her dying father, and a life that made sense. Then she thought about forward, the only direction her father had ever taught her to move. "Okay, but I'm not hiding. Whatever this is, whatever war I just walked into, I'm in it now, all the way." Min Ho's mouth curved slightly, not quite a smile, but close. "I wouldn't expect anything else." That night, Maria stood in her new room at the Lee mansion. Luxury surrounded her, silk bedding, antique furniture, a view of Seoul that cost more she'd make in a decade. Madame Lee had prepared it personally, leaving fresh clothes in the closet and a note on the pillow in careful English. "Welcome home, daughter." But Maria wasn't looking at the comfort. She was mapping exits, counting windows, calculating defensive positions and escape routes, old habits from a childhood spent on military bases where her father drilled contingency plans like multiplication tables. The dog tags hung around her neck, cold metal against her heartbeat. She wasn't running, but she sure as hell wasn't going in unprepared. 3 days of luxury, and Maria was climbing walls. The room was beautiful, the food was incredible, and she was going quietly insane with nothing to do. On the 4th morning, she found Madame Lee in the breakfast room and made her request. "I need work, any work." Madame Lee looked up from her tea, amused. "You're family now, not staff." "Family with purpose," Maria countered. "I'm not built for sitting still." They compromised. Mrs. Park, the head housekeeper who'd run the mansion for 30 years, accepted Maria's help with barely concealed relief. Too many rooms, too much chaos after the fire. Maria threw herself into it. Inventory, scheduling, coordinating repairs. It wasn't glamorous, but it was movement, purpose. Min Ho watched from doorways he thought were discreet, watched her greet his security team with respectful nods, asking their names, learning basic Korean phrases from Mrs. Park. Annyeonghaseyo, 감사합니다, 죄송합니다. Hello, thank you, I'm sorry. She treated his armed guards and his housekeepers with exactly the same courtesy, which confused everyone and earned grudging respect. On the fifth morning, his phone buzzed during breakfast. Intelligence report. The Choi syndicate had claimed credit for Maria's apartment fire through back channels, not hiding it, advertising it. A declaration. The council meeting that followed was tense. 8 of his most trusted lieutenants around a table of dark wood and darker histories. Lieutenant Park Soo-jin, his father's oldest friend, spoke carefully. The girl is a liability. Send her back to America with enough money to stay silent. End the vulnerability. Min Ho's fingers stilled on his coffee cup. No. She makes us weak, Park pressed. The Choi family thinks you're distracted. They're right. Min Ho stood slowly. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Let me be very clear. Anyone who touches her answers to me, personally. Park met his eyes. Min Ho, your father would never... My father is dead. The words came out like gunshots. And maybe if he'd cared about something other than expansion and revenge, he'd still be alive. Min Ho's jaw clenched, violence barely leashed beneath expensive silk. She doesn't make me weak. She makes me give a damn about surviving. Silence. Absolute. In the hallway outside, Maria stood frozen, hand raised to knock. She'd been bringing tea per Mrs. Park's instructions. Now she carefully set the tray on a side table and walked away on silent feet. She found him an hour later in the courtyard, smoking. She'd never seen him smoke before. Stressed hell, weakness showing through cracks. "Those'll kill you," she said. He glanced over, unsurprised. So will a lot of things. Maria sat on the stone bench beside him, close enough to talk, far enough to retreat. Your lieutenant wants me gone. My lieutenant wants a lot of things he won't get. He's not wrong, though. I'm a complication you don't need. Min Ho turned to him fully. My father was murdered when I was 16, shot in the back by someone he trusted. I took over this empire at an age when most kids worry about college entrance exams. He took another drag, smoke curling between them. I built walls so high nothing could touch me. No weaknesses, no soft spots, just survival. And now? Now there's you. He said it simply, like stating coordinates. Running into fire, refusing pain medication, standing in ash and not breaking. You're the first real thing I've felt in 10 years. Maria's throat tightened. My father used to say courage isn't absence of fear. It's perfect understanding of fear and choosing action anyway. She met his eyes. I understand what I walked into. I choose to stay anyway. Why? Because your mother is right. Maria stood, touched his shoulder briefly. I am your daughter-in-law. First time she'd claimed it herself. First time she'd made it a choice instead of a declaration thrust upon her. Min Ho watched her walk back toward the mansion, spine straight, burn scars visible beneath rolled sleeves. Not victim, not liability. Soldier recognizing another soldier across the divide of culture and circumstance. And somewhere in his frozen chest, something warm began to grow. Maria found Min Ho in his office on the 6th morning. I want to train with your security team. He looked up from paperwork, one eyebrow raised. Train? Combat, tactics, whatever they do. She crossed her arms. I'm a target. I should know how to be a hard one. He studied her for a long moment, then made a call. 20 minutes later, Maria stood in the mansion's training yard, a converted garage with mats, weights, and enough weapons to outfit a small militia. 12 men in workout gear sized her up with barely concealed skepticism. The head of security, a scarred veteran named Cho, ran her through basic drills: footwork, stance, reaction time. Maria moved through them with economical precision, nothing flashy, everything functional. Her father's training showing in every controlled motion. "Sparring," Cho said, gesturing to a younger guard named Kim. "Go easy." Kim bowed respectfully and came at her with pulled punches. Mistake. Maria read his telegraphed right hook, sidestepped, hooked his ankle, and used his momentum to put him flat on his back. Before he could recover, she had his practice knife and her foot on his chest. Silence, then grudging nods. From the second-floor balcony, Min-ho watched. He'd come to witness her inevitable failure, to gently redirect her energy elsewhere. Instead, he saw something that made his pulse quicken. Not a housemaid playing soldier, a soldier who'd been pretending to be a housemaid. Maria glanced up, caught his eye, and offered a casual salute. Pure military respect, no coyness, no performance. It disarmed him more completely than any seduction attempt could have. "Train her like you'd train anyone else," he told Joe later. "No special treatment." Training became her ritual. Every morning at 6, Maria was in the yard before most of the team arrived, learning Korean terms for tactical movements, drilling with practice weapons, pushing herself until sweat soaked through her shirt. The guard's skepticism turned to respect. She wasn't playing, she was preparing. Only Park Soo-jin remained hostile, watching from doorways with calculating eyes. That afternoon, Maria was in the garden checking on the herb beds Mrs. Park tended. The day was warm, peaceful. Then, instinct, her father's voice in her head, the one that had kept him alive through 3 deployments, screamed wrong. She moved as the knife came from behind, pivoting left, catching the attacker's wrist, using his momentum to throw him forward. He was masked, dressed in black, professional. He rolled and came up ready. Maria didn't hesitate. Close quarters combat, drilled into her since she was 7 years old. Block, strike, disarm. She caught his knife hand, hyperextended his elbow, heard the wrist snap. He screamed. She took the blade and dropped him to his knees, knife at his throat, when the security team arrived 30 seconds later. Min-ho sprinted from the house, expecting carnage, found Maria standing perfectly calm, blade held with correct grip, attacker bleeding and subdued at her feet. Her hands weren't shaking. "He's Choi Syndicate," she reported, voice steady. "He mentioned your mother specifically during the attack, asked if I wanted to burn like her apartment." She met Min-ho's eyes. Someone gave him access codes. The garden security was disabled from inside. Min-ho's expression went glacial. He looked at his assembled security team, saw Park Soo-jin's face go carefully, deliberately blank. Maria saw it too. Min-ho knelt by the attacker, spoke in rapid Korean. The man spat blood and answers. When the name came, Park's name, the courtyard went silent. Min-ho stood slowly. "Get him to interrogation." Then to Maria, "You're bleeding." She touched her cheek, found blood from a shallow cut she hadn't felt. "I'm standing." He moved close, fingers gentle on her jaw, tilting her face to see the wound. "Yes," he said quietly, something raw in his voice. "You are." Their eyes held. Around them, guards hauled the attacker away. Park Soo-jin had already disappeared. The mansion held its breath. The fire wasn't just spreading, it was about to consume everything. 72 hours of lockdown. The mansion became a fortress. Guards tripled, all exits monitored, every visitor screened. Park Soo-jin was confined to quarters under armed watch, proclaiming innocence to anyone who'd listen. He demanded trial by family council, invoking old traditions from when Min-ho's father ran the syndicate with iron fists and ancient codes. Madame Lee presided. She sat at the head of the long table in the formal dining room, dressed in traditional hanbok, every inch the matriarch who'd survived decades of blood politics. Min-ho sat at her right. The council, 7 senior lieutenants, filled the remaining seats. Park stood at the table's end, hands unbound but flanked by guards. Maria watched from the doorway, uninvited but unchallenged. The evidence unrolled like a death sentence. Financial records showing payments from Choi accounts to Park's offshore holdings, encrypted messages, the captured attacker's testimony given before he'd mysteriously stopped breathing in his cell. Circumstantial, but damning. Park's defense was smooth. "I was investigating them. Deep cover. You think you penetrate the Choi syndicate by asking nicely?" He looked at Min-ho. "Your father taught me this. Sometimes you get dirty to stay clean." Min-ho's face was stone, but Maria saw the conflict underneath. Park had served his father for 20 years, had helped a traumatized 16-year-old become the man who could hold an empire. That history weighed like concrete. Maria studied Park's micro-expressions. The slight curl of his lip when Madame Lee spoke, the flash of contempt quickly hidden. He wasn't afraid, he was righteous. She leaned close to Min-ho, whispered against his ear, "He's not afraid of you, he should be." Min-ho looked again, saw what she meant. Park stood there not like a man on trial, but like a teacher disappointed in a failing student. He believed he was right, believed Maria was the cancer, not him. The council split 4-3 for execution. Madame Lee let the silence stretch, then spoke. "Exile. We are not our enemies. We don't kill family without proof absolute." Her voice carried steel wrapped in silk. "But you are cut off. No contact, no resources, no return. You have until sunset." Park's composure cracked for just a moment. Then he bowed, correct and cold. On his way out, he stopped level with Maria. "She'll destroy everything your father built," he said to Min-ho, eyes never leaving Maria's face. "And you'll let her because you're weak." Then he was gone. Maria found Min-ho on the roof 2 hours later. Seoul sprawled below them, city lights like earthbound stars, infinite and indifferent. He stood at the edge, hands in pockets, staring at the empire he'd inherited and the weight that came with it. "Was he right?" she asked quietly. Min-ho didn't turn. "About what? Is loving me a betrayal of your father?" He was silent so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, "My father built an empire on blood, on fear, on making sure everyone knew exactly how much they should be terrified of him." Min-ho finally looked at her. "He died alone, killed by someone he trusted, leaving me a kingdom I never wanted. Maybe it's time to build something else." "Something like what?" "I don't know." He laughed, broken and honest. "I didn't want this, didn't want to feel this. You walked into fire and brought it back out with you. Now I'm burning." Maria stepped closer. "Neither did I." "We do, anyway." "It makes me weak." "No." She touched his face, the same way he'd touched hers in the garden. Min-ho caught her hand, held it against his cheek. "I don't know how to be human and survive." "Learn," she smiled slightly. "I'm told Bettys are good teachers." He kissed her then, gentle at first, questioning, giving her space to retreat. When she didn't, when she pressed closer instead, hands fisting in his shirt, it deepened into something desperate, like they were both drowning and breathing for the first time, like fire meeting gasoline and choosing to burn together rather than apart. When they finally broke apart, foreheads pressed together, breathing hard, Min-ho whispered, "This is the most terrifying thing I've ever done." "Good," said Maria. "Fear is just information. It doesn't control us." Below them, Seoul continued its chaos. Above them, stars struggled through light pollution. Between them, something new was being built from ash and choice, and the courage to feel something real in a world built on calculated cold. The empire was changing. They just had to survive long enough to see what it became. The summons came through Mrs. Park. Madame Lee requested Maria's presence for tea. Private ceremony, traditional room, come at sunset. Maria understood the weight of it instantly. Her father had taught her about rituals, military and otherwise, about how some invitations were actually tests. She dressed carefully in simple clothes, hair pulled back, and arrived exactly on time. The tea room was all rice paper and low tables, evening light filtering gold through screens. Madame Lee knelt on a cushion, tea service arranged with precise beauty. Maria paused at the threshold, bowed correctly, waist bent, eyes down, respectful, and waited. Madame Lee's breath caught, this foreign girl understanding honor without being told. "Please, sit." Maria knelt across from her, movements careful, accepting the tea with both hands. They drank in comfortable silence first, then Madame Lee spoke. "Tell me about your mother." Maria's throat tightened. "She died when I was 12, cancer. My father was deployed when it happened. He got emergency leave, but..." She looked at the tea. "He made it home 3 hours too late." "And that's when he taught you to be fearless?" "That's when he taught me that life doesn't wait, that hesitation costs everything." Madame Lee nodded slowly. "My husband was murdered 10 years ago, shot in the back during a negotiation he thought was safe." Her hands were steady on the teacup. Min Ho was 26, old enough to lead, young enough to be destroyed by it. He became stone that day, survived by feeling nothing. "I didn't mean to complicate his life," Maria said quietly. "Complicated is better than dead inside." Madame Lee set down her teacup. "You've made him feel again, made him want something beyond survival. That's worth every complication." She reached into her handbag and pulled out a jade ring. Thick band, dark green stone, family seal carved deep. "My husband wore this. When he died, I gave it to Min Ho." She held Maria's gaze. "He returned it last night, said you should have it." Maria's eyes widened. "I can't, that's too valuable, too meaningful?" Madame Lee took Maria's hand, slid the ring onto her thumb. Too large for fingers, but it fit there perfectly. "Phoenix rises from fire. You ran into flames and pulled me out. You are Phoenix. You are family." Something broke in Maria's chest. The careful control she'd maintained since her apartment burned, since her life exploded into chaos, since she'd become something other than what she'd planned. Tears came, hot, unexpected, unstoppable, not from pain, from belonging. Madame Lee moved around the table, pulled Maria into an embrace that smelled like jasmine and smoke and home. "You don't ask permission to be brave," she whispered. "That's why you belong here." That night, Maria sat on her bed, wearing the jade ring, turning it in the lamplight. She called her father, told him everything: the fire, Min Ho, the council trial, the kiss on the roof, this ring that meant acceptance. He was quiet for a long time. Then, "He treats you right?" "Better than I deserve." Her father laughed, that rough sound she'd grown up loving. "Then I taught you well. You found a warrior who respects warriors." His voice softened. "Your mother would be proud." Maria smiled through fresh tears. "How are you feeling?" Pause. Too long. "Baby girl, we need to talk about that." Her stomach dropped. "Dad?" "Doctors gave me new timeline. Cancer's aggressive. Months, not years." He said it like a mission brief. Facts, no drama. "I wanted you to know. Wanted you to be prepared." Maria gripped the phone, looked at the jade ring, thought about empires built from blood and families built from choice and time running out like sand through desperate fingers. "I'm bringing you here, to Korea. Best doctors, best care. The Lee family, they have resources. I'll make it happen." "Maria!" "No arguments. You taught me not to hesitate." Her voice steadied, became the soldier's daughter he'd raised. "I found something real here, Dad, something worth fighting for, and I'm not losing you without a fight." Another pause, then pride in his voice. "That's my girl." After they hung up, Maria sat in the dark, jade ring heavy on her thumb. New mission parameters: earn her place in this family, secure her future, bring her father to Korea before time ran out, make this mean something, make this last. Outside her window, soul glowed eternal. Inside her chest, purpose burned like phoenix fire.
2 months changed everything. Maria was no longer the housemaid who'd stumbled into their world. She was something else entirely. Unofficial security consultant, tactical advisor, the woman who'd identified 3 critical vulnerabilities in the mansion's defense grid that even Cho had missed. Her father's training, applied with fresh eyes, made her invaluable. The lieutenants who'd been skeptical now sought her input. She studied Korean with fierce dedication, learned syndicate politics, memorized the web of alliances and blood feuds that governed Seoul's underworld, made herself essential beyond the romance that had sparked this transformation. Min-ho changed too, less brutal, more strategic. He started restructuring, closing violent operations, opening legitimate businesses, building something that could survive daylight scrutiny. His enemies watched and whispered, weakness. The Choi Syndicate prepared their answer. Intelligence came at dawn, coordinated attack planned on 3 Lee properties simultaneously. The mansion was primary target. Min-ho found Maria in the training yard and didn't waste time with gentleness. "You're leaving. Tonight. Safe house in Busan until this is over." Maria stopped mid-drill. "No, that wasn't a request. And I'm not taking orders." She faced him fully, sweat-soaked and resolute. "I'm staying." "Maria, my father taught me to stand ground. If I run now, I'm deserting." Her jaw set in that stubborn line he'd come to know. "Betties don't desert." "I can't lose you," he said, and the raw fear in his voice nearly broke her. "Then stop trying to lock me away like I'm breakable." She stepped closer. "I'm a soldier, Min-ho. Let me fight." He loved her more for it, hated the terror it brought with equal measure. The attack came at dusk, coordinated, professional, overwhelming. Explosions at the gates, breach teams hitting all sides. Maria was positioned at the east entrance with 4 guards. When the Choi soldiers came through the wall, she was ready. Military training met street brutality. She moved with economical precision, center mass shots, tactical spacing, covering her team's blind spots. Took down 2 attackers, saved a young guard named Kim from a knife that would have opened his throat. Then chaos. Smoke grenade, temporary breach in their line. Someone grabbed her from behind, a Choi lieutenant, professional grip, dragging her toward the gap in their defenses. This was the test. Death wasn't theoretical anymore. It was a knife pressed to her ribs and a voice promising slow suffering. Her father's training kicked in like muscle memory. Fear is just information. She cataloged it, knife position, captor's balance, distance to exit, and acted. Headbutt backward, broke his nose, twisted, stole his gun from the holster, shot him in the leg before he could recover. He went down screaming. Maria ran back toward her post, not away. Found Min-ho in the courtyard surrounded by his men, searching with frantic eyes. When he saw her, bleeding from a head wound, gun still in hand, absolutely alive, something shattered in his expression. They collided in the center of the courtyard, his hands everywhere at once, checking for wounds, for breaks, for proof she was real. "You came back," he breathed. "I never left. I told you I'm not running." He kissed her there, amid smoke and bodies and the tail end of violence. Kissed her like she was oxygen and he'd been drowning. Around them, his men secured the perimeter. Above them, Seoul's sky was orange with fires burning in 3 districts. "You fought," he said against her mouth. "I'm Betty Blood. We stand." The battle was won. The Choi Syndicate broken, and Maria Betty, housemaid turned warrior, stood in the ruins with jade ring catching firelight and the taste of victory sharp on her tongue. She'd earned this. All of it.
1 year after the fire, they gathered under the courtyard tree. No grand celebration, no political theater. Just the 3 of them at a low table with candles flickering in the evening breeze. Simple food, expensive wine, and the comfortable silence of people who'd survived hell together. "This isn't a traditional celebration," Maria said, smiling as Mrs. Park brought out bulgogi. "It is now," Madame Lee declared, "the day my daughter-in-law saved my life. We should mark it every year." Min-ho reached for more rice. Mother, technically she's not. If my son drags his feet any longer, I'll drag him to the altar myself. Madame Lee's eyes sparkled with mischief. A year, Min-ho, a whole year of mooning around each other like teenagers. Maria nearly choked on her wine. Madame Lee, I was planning to ask, Min-ho said quietly. In my own time. The courtyard went still. Even the breeze seemed to pause. Time's up, his mother said, but gently now, understanding. Min-ho stood, took Maria's hand, pulled her to her feet. The jade ring on her thumb caught candlelight, his father's ring, his mother's blessing, a year of proving she belonged. His hands were steady, but she felt the tremor underneath. This man who faced down syndicates and blood feuds without flinching was terrified of 4 words. My mother claimed you before I knew what was happening. The city sees you as mine. My enemies fear you because you're protected, but I don't want your life defined by obligation. He touched her face, thumb tracing the scar from the battle. I want you to choose me. Not my world, not my empire, not the safety I can provide. Me. Just me. Maria's throat tightened. You think I haven't already? I need to hear it. She took a breath that felt like jumping off a cliff. I saved you from a burning building before we even met. You built something I could belong to. I saved your mother, and you saved me right back. Her voice steadied. We've been saving each other since the beginning. I choose you, Min-ho, with your past, with your scars, with every unfinished piece of the man you are. He dropped to one knee. Madame Lee gasped, actually gasped, and covered her mouth with both hands. Maria Betty, Min-ho said, voice rough with emotion he'd spent a decade learning to feel again. Will you marry me? Not as my mother's declaration, not as protection or politics. Will you be my wife because I love you and can't imagine surviving without you? Maria laughed through sudden tears. One condition, anything. Promise me you'll never shut me out again. If we do this, she gestured at the empire beyond the walls, the life they'd built from ash and choice. We do it together. No locked doors, no secrets kept to protect me. I promise, he said immediately, on everything I have left, on everything we're building. I promise. Then, yes. She pulled him to his feet. Yes, I'll marry you. Madame Lee erupted in victorious celebration, clapping and laughing and shouting in Korean. I told you, didn't I tell you from the beginning? The moment she ran into that fire, I knew it. Min-ho ignored his mother, pulling Maria close, kissing them like they weren't being watched, like the world beyond this courtyard didn't exist. When they finally broke apart, foreheads pressed together, he whispered, Thank you for running toward the fire. Thank you for being worth it, she whispered back. Madame Lee dabbed her eyes with a silk handkerchief. Best accident that ever happened to me, she declared. I nearly died and gained a daughter. Fate works in mysterious ways. Maria looked at the woman who'd claimed her, the man who'd chosen her, the family she'd found in flames. Not an accident, she said softly. Destiny. Above them, Seoul's sky was clear for once, stars visible between the light pollution. The jade ring on her thumb would soon be joined by a wedding band. The empire was changing, becoming something that could exist in daylight. And Maria Betty, soldier's daughter, housemaid, warrior, phoenix, had finally found where she belonged. In the fire, in the choice, in the love built from ash and courage. Home. 3 months after the proposal, James Beatty arrived in Korea on the Lee family's private medical jet. Maria met him at the airport, and when he saw her, confident, purposeful, wearing tailored clothes and a jade ring that spoke of acceptance, his eyes shone with pride. Look at you, he said, pulling her into a careful embrace. Built yourself a whole new world. Come meet it, she replied. Min-ho waited at the private hospital, hands in pockets, unusually nervous. When Maria's father was settled in his room, best oncology team money could buy, already reviewing his case, the 2 men finally stood face to face. Warriors from different wars, same fundamental code. You're the one she ran toward, James said, studying Min-ho with a soldier's assessment. I'm the one she stayed for, Min-ho replied. He met the older man's eyes. You trained her well, sir. James smiled, tired but genuine. No, I gave her tools. She made herself. He paused. You treat her right? With respect, always. Then you have my blessing. The wedding came 2 weeks later, small ceremony in the mansion courtyard under the tree that had witnessed their transformation. Maria wore traditional hanbok in deep red silk, but her father's dog tags hung beneath it, metal against her heart. Min-ho wore traditional dress. The jade ring returned to his hand now that Maria had a wedding band being forged. Madame Lee presided, crying openly for the first time anyone could remember. Just family present, loyal lieutenants, Mrs. Park dabbing her eyes, medical staff who'd left the hospital to witness this, and James Beatty in a wheelchair, oxygen cannula in place, but absolutely present. When vows came, Maria went off script. I ran into fire to save a stranger, she said, voice carrying across the courtyard. I'd run through fire every day to keep you. Min-ho's response was equally raw. You didn't save my mother that day. You saved us all. The reception happened in the rebuilt kitchen, no longer just functional space, but heart of the home. Photos of Min-ho's father and Maria's mother graced a memorial table, family spanning death and distance. James, weakening but determined, raised his glass for a toast. My daughter learned courage from war, he said, voice thin but steady. But she learned love from peace. May you build both. He died 2 weeks later, peaceful, pain-managed, holding Maria's hand while Min-ho stood behind her, solid and present. James Beatty's last words were, You found your ground, baby girl. Now hold it. Maria grieved like the soldier he'd raised, silently, thoroughly, completely. Then she stood again and kept moving forward, the only direction she knew. 1 year after the kitchen fire that started everything, Maria stood in that same kitchen, now gleaming with new tile and old memories. Her hand rested on her growing belly, 5 months along, carrying the next generation. Min-ho had restructured the empire into something that could survive daylight scrutiny, creating exits for those who wanted out, building legitimate power instead of ruling through fear. Madame Lee was teaching her to make traditional soup, patient with Maria's clumsy knife work. You know, the older woman said casually, I told everyone I claimed you as daughter-in-law because you saved me. You did save you, Maria replied, focused on chopping. Madame Lee smiled. I lied. I claimed you because I saw you run toward fire when everyone else ran away. That's who I wanted my son to love, someone who runs toward, not away. Maria touched her belly. This child will run toward things too. Good. Madame Lee's eyes shone. Our family needs more phoenixes. Outside, Seoul continued its eternal chaos. Traffic, crowds, the machinery of 8 million lives grinding forward. Inside, in a kitchen built from literal ashes, 3 generations of women prepared dinner. Madame Lee, who'd survived assassination and loss. Maria, who'd run into flames and found family. And the child not yet born, who would inherit something better than empire. Choice. Min-ho came home to find them there, laughing over soup that was slightly burned, but made with love. He stood in the doorway, watching his mother and his wife and his unborn child, and felt something his father never had, peace. Maria looked up, caught his eye, smiled. He crossed to her, kissed her temple, touched her belly where their future grew. How was your day? She asked. Better now, he replied. That night, after dinner and stories and Madame Lee's satisfied retirement to her quarters, Min-ho and Maria stood in the rebuilt kitchen alone. He pulled her close, her back against his chest, both their hands on her belly. Thank you, he whispered. For what? For running toward the fire. He turned her to face him. For staying, for building this with me. Maria touched his face. Thank you for being worth running toward. They stood there in the place where everything began, where flames had tried to take a life and instead forged a family. Outside, the city's lights flickered like earthbound stars. Inside, something better than survival was being built: legacy. Maria Beatty didn't just pull a woman from fire that day. She ignited something that would burn forever. Hope that even in blood-soaked worlds, phoenixes can rise, that families can be chosen, that courage transforms everything it touches, that love built in flames burns brightest and longest. She found more than a home in those flames. She found purpose, found family, found a man who'd been dead inside until she showed him how to live, found a mother who saw her worth before anyone else did. She found legacy. And in the kitchen where it all began, with Min-ho's arms around her and their child growing between them, and Madame Lee's blessing surrounding them like armor, Maria Beatty, soldier's daughter, phoenix, warrior, wife, finally understood what her father had been teaching her all along. The bravest thing isn't running into fire. It's choosing to stay when the flames die down and build something that lasts.